What brings her here? My mother's voice slithered through the expansive foyer. Cold, piercing, akin to a knife cutting directly through my heart. My father didn't even take a moment to glance back. My sister Vanessa stood beside him, arms crossed, a smirk playing on her lips that blended contempt with amusement. No one uttered my name. No one offered even a fleeting look that recognized my existence, my history, or my emotions. My mere existence prompted all three of them to avert their gazes, as though I were something unclean, unwelcome, and in urgent need of expulsion. The memory of the day they expelled me from the house lingers vividly in my mind. The winter when I had recently celebrated my 17th birthday. The earth lay encased in ice, the wind cut through the air with a sharpness akin to blades, and I found myself trembling before the colonial-style mansion that had once been my sanctuary. In my grasp lay a frayed backpack, stuffed with some worn clothes, and $14.82. Fortune did not favor us. There was no farewell embrace. I was left to find my own way out. My mother, Deborah Hayes, lingered behind the curtain, a glass of red wine cradled in her hand. Her gaze vacant, as though I were a long-settled obligation. My father, Richard Hayes, uttered a single sentence. "Amelia, you've matured, it's time to prioritize your own well-being." Everything unfolded in just a few fleeting moments. No one inquired about my destination. No one inquired about my sleeping arrangements. Not even if I had the funds for a meal? Vanessa lingered at the foot of the stairs, phone poised, capturing every moment as I trudged out the door with my bag, as if my departure was a twisted spectacle for her amusement. She was 3 years my junior, the shining star in my parents' gaze. Perpetually correct, endlessly cherished, eternally pardoned. What about me? Merely a silhouette lingering at the edge. I departed from the house, my gaze fixed ahead, never glancing back. I feared that if I did, I would find myself pleading. Yet, I had made a vow to myself. I will never bow to those who once deemed me a living failure. That evening, I strolled almost 5 miles to the heart of Fairview, where a convenience store remained open around the clock. I nestled behind an aged bus stop, cocooned in a flimsy hoodie. The wind shrieked through the fissures in the bricks, cutting into my skin like shards of glass. My stomach churned with an insatiable hunger. Each inhale seared through my lungs. Yet, I held back my tears. I was unable to. Frozen droplets would halt in their descent, never touching my skin. The following day, I strolled through the streets, searching for a suitable place to rest my head. What about the church? Shut. Is it the community center? Too many people. I attempted to secure a position at a bakery and a coffee shop. Without an address, social security number, or identification, it's unlikely anyone would consider hiring a girl. The rumble from my stomach was so pronounced that it caught the attention of those around me. On that second night, I found myself resting behind a dumpster, tucked away behind McKinley's Deli. The sole source of warmth emanated from the kitchen exhaust vent. My clothes reeked of grease and charred meat, but at least I managed to avoid freezing to death. I nestled into my coat, clutching my backpack as if it contained the final remnants of my youth. Every noise made me jump, whether it was a car, a clanging metal door, or a barking dog. I was acutely aware of the potential dangers that lurked around me, the possibility of being robbed, assaulted, or facing something even more dire. Yet, I found myself with no alternative. On the third day, I sought employment at a car wash, but the manager scrutinized me and remarked, "We don't hire strays." I sensed a warmth rise to my cheeks, yet I maintained my composure. I had grown accustomed to the feeling of being underestimated. That evening, I returned to the area behind McKinley's. However, another individual had already taken possession of the place. A man without a home, cradling an empty bottle as he sleeps. I hesitated to approach. I strolled to the rear of a quaint diner named Ruby's Grill. The back door stood ajar, a warm yellow glow spilling into the night. As I glanced within, a voice resonated. "What are you up to?" I leaped. A woman of middle age stood before me, her curly brown hair framing her face, a flower-adorned apron draped over her, and a long-handled ladle in her grasp. She regarded me not as a stranger, but as if we were old acquaintances, as though she had recognized me long before my knock ever echoed through the door. I found myself at a loss for words. Just as I was about to walk away, she remarked, "If you intend to rest behind my kitchen, you might as well clean the floor first." I stood still, unable to move. So, I went ahead and did it. Ruby Delaney was the proud owner of the diner. The first individual in 3 days of torment who regarded me as a fellow human. Ruby simply accepted my presence without probing into my past or seeking explanations. She passed me a mop and pointed to a tray of chicken stir-fry noodles resting on the counter. "First, nourish yourself, then dive into your tasks." I savored each morsel, then tidied up until the clock struck 12. Upon completing my task, she gestured towards the storage room at the back. An aged mattress rests in the corner, not the tittiest option but certainly preferable to the bare floor. I nodded, struggling to hold back the tears that were on the verge of overflowing. After 3 long days, I finally enjoyed a hot meal and found a place to sleep, free from the company of rats. I drew my hoodie over my head, settled onto the firm mattress, and let out a slow breath. No one had any idea of my whereabouts. While my family likely gathered around the fireplace for a cozy dinner, I, Amelia Hayes, found myself dozing off next to a pile of storage boxes in a small diner. Yet, I existed. I was determined not to falter. The following morning, I stirred awake to the rhythmic clatter of pots and the enticing aroma of crispy bacon wafting through the kitchen. Every muscle in my body throbbed, and my eyes burned with intensity. Yet the sensation of resting on something genuine, not the chill of concrete, urged me to cling to that moment for just a bit more time. "Why are you still lounging around? Rise and shine, it's time to mop the floor." Ruby's voice cut through the air, rough and commanding, as if she had spent 2 decades in the kitchen of a military outpost. I sprang to my feet, almost stumbling over the blanket that had ensnared my legs. Rather than reprimanding me, she shot me a fleeting glance and casually tossed a mop my way. "Focus on your tasks first, nourishment can wait." I cleaned the floors, scrubbed the dishes, disposed of the trash, and moved boxes, tirelessly from dawn until the final customer departed just before midnight. My entire body throbbed as if it were disintegrating, yet for the first time in my existence, I felt valuable. After 3 days, Ruby presented me with a weathered, faded uniform shirt and a chipped plastic name tag. Amelia, culinary aide. Emotion surged within me, causing my eyes to glisten. Not due to its beauty, but because, for the first time, I possessed a name, a role, a place. Even if it was modest. Ruby remained quiet, yet her gaze was always on me. In moments when I was drenched in sweat from balancing 10 plates simultaneously, or when my hands became raw from scrubbing dishes in scorching water without protection, she would silently place a towel or a box of bandages on the shelf. No flattery, yet I was aware she noticed me. "You're not a bad kid," Ruby remarked one time as I was peeling potatoes. "You were thrust from the nest sooner than others." I spent almost a year at Ruby's Grill, putting in 2 shifts a day, and occasionally even 3. The tips were minimal, yet I managed to save every single penny. I gave up smoking, cut out candy, and even sacrificed sleep to pay for night classes for my GED. I studied in the storage room after my shifts, relying on library books. There were evenings when I drifted off at the table, my pen resting in my grasp. Yet, each time the memory of my mother labeling me a burden surfaced, I clenched the pen with greater intensity. Upon reaching the age of 18, I successfully completed the GED. Ruby offered neither a hug nor applause. She gently set a small cupcake adorned with a flickering candle on the table and remarked, "Congratulations, now the journey begins." I wept like a downpour that evening, not out of sentiment, but from the sheer experience of being alive. I submitted my application to Central Oregon Community College, focusing on a major in business. I realized that I couldn't be stuck washing dishes indefinitely. I sought to grasp the concept of money. Agreements. Ways to operate a business. As Ruby had done for 3 decades. Upon receiving my acceptance, I was overwhelmed with joy and could hardly contain my excitement. Ruby, ever composed, handed me a ring of weathered keys. The storeroom has become insufficient. Utilize the spare room upstairs, it's essential for your focused study sessions. I was at a loss for words to express my gratitude to her. Ruby never expressed any concern. Yet, she provided me with a place to belong, an opportunity to work, and above all, a renewed opportunity to start anew. I dedicated my days to studying and my nights to working. There were days when I managed to get just 3 hours of sleep. Yet I pressed on, refusing to let myself falter. A simmering anger resided within me. At my parents, at Vanessa, and at the way the world used to perceive me as if I were worthless. After 2 years, I proudly found myself among the top 5 in my department at graduation. At the ceremony, I donned a navy blue gown and a quivering cap as I made my way across the stage. No family showed up. No one captured any images. However, I captured it. I observed it repeatedly, time and time again. Recollecting my thoughts. You successfully navigated through Amelia. I submitted my application for a full scholarship to the Portland Business Institute, and much to everyone's astonishment, I was accepted. Upon my arrival in Portland, I found myself with precisely $68 in my pocket and a notebook brimming with aspirations. I found myself in a room with 3 unfamiliar faces, serving tables on weekends, and immersing myself in studies from the break of dawn until the stroke of midnight. I submitted applications for every internship I could discover, ranging from organic dairy shops to suppliers of hospital food. At that moment, the chance presented itself. I received an internship opportunity at Nutrimedics, a startup focused on creating medical nutrition for cancer patients. Though it was without compensation, I gained invaluable knowledge. Crafting a unique identity, finding the right partners, and navigating agreements. I diligently recorded notes during each meeting, posing inquiries ranging from the warehouse team to the CEO. 2 years later, I graduated close to the top of my class, holding on to an idea that I had nurtured for years. A specialized nutrition brand catering to individuals with unique dietary requirements. Individuals with heart conditions, those managing diabetes, and patients in recovery after surgery. I chose the name Reclaim as I understood the profound experience of losing it all. And to reclaim it. I secured a small loan from a fund supporting young entrepreneurs, combined it with my modest savings, and embarked on my journey from the ground up. I meticulously packed each product box by hand, pedaled through the streets for delivery, and shared live streams every night to highlight their advantages. 3 years passed before Reclaim finally captured the spotlight. Yet, when it finally ignited, it surged forth with an unstoppable force, consuming everything in its path. At the age of 25, Reclaim had reached an impressive $5 million in revenue. A year later, the company reached a valuation of almost $20 million following our initial investment round. I secured distribution agreements with the biggest hospital network in the Pacific Northwest, and Reclaim established itself as a fundamental component in clinical nutrition. When a journalist inquired about the key to my achievements, I simply smiled. It began with a mop and a solitary figure, who never inquired about my identity. The memory of those frigid nights behind the diner lingers, the echo of my father's door slamming shut, and the look of disdain in my mother's eyes remain vivid. Yet, the aroma of Ruby's baked pies lingers in my memory, along with that initial mop and the expression in her eyes as I crossed the graduation stage. I endured. I stood up. I transformed into a person they never thought I would become. The aroma of fine wine, luxurious perfume, and delicate white orchids enveloped the ballroom at the Ashbury Grand Hotel. The crystal chandeliers illuminated my burgundy evening gown, producing the precise cold brilliance I desired. Because tonight, I found myself immersed in more than just an engagement celebration. I existed in a manner they never envisioned possible. 9 years have passed. 3,385 days have passed since that night when I was cast aside like a stray dog. And now, I had returned. Strolling over the polished marble surfaces amidst the elegantly attired gathering. As though I had never experienced fracture. As though I had never found rest beneath the warmth of a diner's kitchen stove. The music ceased in an instant. The initial gaze that captured my attention wasn't from my mother or Vanessa, but from Lucas Reed, my sister's betrothed. He remained motionless, the champagne glass quivering in his grasp. His lips parted ever so slightly, as though he had just encountered a specter from days gone by. I offered him a subtle smile. One as frigid as the onset of winter. "Oh, look who finally decided to make an appearance," my mother, Deborah Hayes, remarked. Her voice sliced through the air like a whip cracking in the stillness of the hall. Did the girl truly manage to find her way here? Every gaze was fixed upon me. Vanessa, the radiant jewel in my mother's gaze. She donned a cream-white engagement gown, her arm elegantly entwined with Lucas's. Her face rose, reminiscent of a youthful monarch in her prime. "You're not on the guest list," she hissed, her voice cutting through the whispers around them. "Leave now before you spoil my engagement celebration." I remained silent. The crisp sound of my heels resonated against the polished marble as I advanced. Every sound resembles a ticking clock. Richard, the individual officially recognized as my father, leaned against the bar. He cast a fleeting glance in my direction before looking away, sipping his drink as if I were merely an insignificant fly buzzing in his periphery. Flawless. Still the same old family, full of arrogance and deceit, so convinced I would always remain that helpless 17-year-old they abandoned in the snow. I fixed my gaze on Vanessa. I remained utterly still. "Surprised to see me," I remarked, my voice steady as a blade drawn from its scabbard. "What are you even doing here?" Vanessa scoffed with a hint of mockery. "In search of complimentary meals?" A couple of guests in close proximity started to murmur softly. A young woman caught her friend's eye, her hand covering her mouth. Several of the elder gentlemen ceased their smiles, inclining closer to catch every word. "I approached to offer my congratulations," I said, retrieving a black envelope sealed with crimson wax from my clutch. I passed it to Lucas. "It's essential for you to understand the person you're committing to for life." Lucas accepted it, bewildered, yet proceeded to open it regardless. As his gaze swept over the pages, I observed the hue fade from his complexion. His jaw clenched. His fingers tightened around the envelope, threatening to crush it completely. "Vanessa," he uttered, each syllable strained from his clenched jaw. "Could you please explain what this is?" "It's just nonsense she invented," Vanessa yelled, attempting to grab the paper from his grasp. I crossed my arms. "This document is a transcript from Oregon State Medical School. Clearly articulates. Vanessa Hayes left her studies during her second year. I never completed my studies, much less achieved the title of doctor." The room burst into chaos. Gasping breaths, astonished whispers, and a scattering of derisive chuckles permeated the atmosphere. My mother's eyes narrowed, a fierce intensity radiating from them as if she wished to incinerate me right then and there. She advanced, dragging Vanessa along, her voice sharp and piercing. "That's enough, we don't need to listen to any more of this nonsense. You have no place here, Amelia." I gazed into her eyes and offered a gentle smile. "You ought to be aware of something, dear mother," I refrain from speaking unless I possess evidence, and I cautiously delved into my clutch once more. "This document is an official scan from the university's administrative office, complete with signature and seal." Lucas gazed at Vanessa as if she were a stranger. He slipped off the engagement ring, his hands shaking with uncertainty. "You deceived me, regarding all matters." I didn't want you to see me as a failure," Vanessa sobbed, clutching his arm tightly. "I believed you were genuine," Lucas remarked, distancing himself. "Yet you are merely a replica, molded by your creator from the very beginning." My mother attempted to keep her calm, yet I noticed the tension in her neck, her pulse flickering just beneath the surface of her skin. I glanced at Richard, who remained there, quiet and unmoving. "Are you really going to remain silent and turn your back when things get tough, just as you did nearly a decade ago?" There was no reply from him. He clenched his glass so fiercely that it shattered in his hand. I raised my chin and surveyed the opulent ballroom. This place my family once envisioned as the ideal setting for a flawless wedding. The costly fragrance failed to conceal the foul odor of deceit. Satin dresses, tailored suits, feigned smiles, mere facades concealing a family eroded from within. You ought to express gratitude, I remarked, my tone smooth and ethereal, reminiscent of a breeze caressing a delicate surface. For tonight, this marks just the start of something greater. Vanessa was on the brink of losing control. She lunged at Lucas to seize the papers, but he recoiled, as though she had delivered a gut-wrenching blow. I remained still. I remained motionless, clutching a glass of orange juice. Chilly, sharp, and representative of the present instance. You believe that a few insignificant scraps of paper can bring me down? Vanessa let out a piercing scream, her cheeks burning and her hair in disarray. I'm currently interning at St. Helena, and it seems the entire city is aware of it. I smirked, then deliberately reached into my clutch once more, this time retrieving a sleek, black USB. I lifted it as if it were a precious gem. All right, let's uncover the truth, shall we? The atmosphere fell into a profound stillness. Soft murmurs dwindled away. A handful of guests placed their glasses down, their gazes fixed intently on me. This USB contains comprehensive records of the correspondence between Deborah and Richard Hayes, as well as the academic director of Oregon Medical School. It includes emails, scanned transcripts, and, most importantly, a modest donation proposal aimed at addressing their daughter's expulsion for plagiarism. Lucas stood still. Are you being serious? I nodded, understanding without the need for additional words. He faced Vanessa, his voice trembling. You gazed into my eyes and declared that you were in residency, promising that your certification would come in just a few months. You made a promise. At the resting place of my grandfather. Do you recall? Vanessa remained silent. Her lips parted, yet silence enveloped her. Only quivering lips and frantic eyes scanning the space. The individuals who once adored her now lingered at a distance, as if fearful of contracting something infectious. My mother had found a semblance of calm by this point. She advanced, her voice sharp and unyielding. Amelia, this act has reached its limit. What is it that you desire? Funds? Renown? A heartfelt expression of regret. I regarded her as if she were a decaying wooden figure, striving to remain upright amidst a tempest. Then I chuckled. Not from a place of anger. Not from a place of sorrow. Only sheer disdain. You still fail to understand, don't you, Mother? I'm not seeking an apology, I want the truth to be revealed, and you are fully aware of that. I haven't begun yet. I ascended the modest stage at the heart of the ballroom, the very spot where the band had ceased their music amidst the turmoil. I scanned the room, making eye contact with each individual in turn. I then elevated my voice. Over the last decade, the Hayes Family Health Clinic, operating under Richard Hayes's name, has engaged in a scheme involving the submission of numerous fraudulent insurance claims, the falsification of medical records, the issuance of unnecessary prescriptions, and even the creation of fictitious patient visits, all to siphon off hundreds of thousands of dollars from insurance providers. A sharp intake of breath echoed from the distant corner of the room. Dr. Manning, the director of St. Helena Hospital, the same place where Vanessa had once boasted about her residency, sprang to his feet. Are you talking about the clinic located on Maple Street? He inquired, his tone subdued and frigid. I acknowledged, gaze unwavering. Indeed. And this, I raised the USB, holds it all. Bank statements, internal emails, invoices, and even audio recordings of meetings where Mr. Hayes directed staff on how to manipulate the rules for financial gain. Dr. Manning's face flushed with a deep shade of crimson. He turned his head sharply toward Richard, his voice laced with anger. You utilized my hospital as a facade? You mentioned that your daughter was completely qualified to practice medicine and had undergone rigorous training? Richard attempted to speak, but his words were lost, overwhelmed by the seething fury of Dr. Manning. He glanced at his assistant. Bring the legal team in immediately, I need attorneys present before I exit this room." My mother turned ashen. She hurried over and seized my wrist, whispering with intensity, "Amelia, are you attempting to suffocate this family in silence?" I inclined my head, drawing nearer to her ear. "No, I'm simply tidying up the mess you created." I pulled my arm away with force. From my grasp, I retrieved a second USB, gleaming silver and emblazoned with the IRS logo. And, at last, I made an announcement. The most thrilling performance of the evening. "For the last decade, you have exploited my identity to engage in tax fraud, minimizing personal income, dodging federal taxes, and even establishing credit accounts under my name. This comes from those who once proclaimed that I was no longer a member of this family." The atmosphere became still. A lady spluttered into her champagne. A man slumped into his chair as if he had just received the most devastating news imaginable. I twirled the USB around my fingers. Its metallic gleam, reflecting the chandelier's glow like a silver bullet in a dark fairy tale. 3 weeks ago, I submitted everything to the IRS. I spoke in a composed manner. I have been made aware that a formal investigation was initiated 2 days ago. Richard sank heavily into a chair. Evera turned pale as a specter. Vanessa lay on the floor, her wedding dress crumpled around her, lipstick smudged across her face. Lucas remained still, observing them intently. 3 individuals who once epitomized the ideal family. Now disintegrating like the remnants of a once mighty fortress. I descended from the stage, my eyes cutting through the audience for one last look. If you ever believed you could silence me, you ought to have ensured that I couldn't escape. Yet, unfortunately, I smiled. I survived. I have returned. And I carried chaos along. Silence enveloped the scene, as if time itself had paused. Time appeared to stand still. All gazes were locked onto me. The daughter they had removed from narratives, images, and introductions. At this moment, I found myself at the very heart of it all. Not pleading for a place among them, yet reducing it to ashes. The initial sound that broke the stillness was neither a protest nor a denial. "Ha!" The sound echoed with a firm cadence, the sharp impact of polished leather against the cold, smooth surface of marble. Intentional, measured. 2 security personnel clad in dark suits made their entrance through the side door, accompanied by an IRS agent dressed in complete uniform. The shiny emblem on his uniform shone brightly, like a nail securing the lid of my family's elaborate facade. "Mr. and Mrs. Hayes?" The officer's voice echoed through the air. Concise, impartial, conclusive. Richard fought to stand, his fingers gripping the back of his chair, his gaze distant as if he couldn't fathom the reality before him. Deborah attempted to steady herself, yet the fear in her eyes and the quiver in her voice revealed her inner turmoil. This is an error. We are the ones who have suffered in this situation. Everything stems from her influence." She gestured towards me, her voice rising almost to a shriek. "She's the one fabricating this, she's not in a stable state of mind, she's fixated." The officer remained utterly unfazed. He extracted a hefty folder and wrapped it lightly with his adorned finger. "Our collection boasts more than 230 pages of detailed documentation. Deceptive tax submissions, foreign accounts in Belize and the Cayman Islands, along with 14 grievances from patients of Hayes Family Health Clinic. This is not an error." That sentence sealed the deal. 2 security officers advanced with purpose. A hand resting gently on my father's shoulder. The other gestured for my mother to place her purse on the ground. "You can't do this to us," Deborah screamed. "We hold a position of importance, and we have legal representation." "Your attorney will meet you at the federal station," the man in the suit replied, his voice as frigid as a winter's night. Richard yielded without a fight. At last, he turned his gaze toward me after all those hours. And his eyes, which had once radiated disdain and icy indifference, were now overtaken by fear. The type of dread that arises when all you held sacred starts to crumble. His standing. The strength he possesses. and the haunting belief that his eldest daughter was lost to him for all eternity. I remained unblinking as they were led past the lines of banquet tables, through the disdainful gazes of those who had once shown them reverence. Some averted their gaze. Several individuals lifted their phones. Yet, no one came forth to stand up for them. No one at all. Vanessa remained on the floor, her wedding dress a tangle of fabric, her makeup a blurred canvas, as if the colors had run in a downpour. She grasped her head, her whole body shaking uncontrollably. She fell silent, no longer resisting. Did not scoff. What was left behind was a shattered, raw chaos. Exposed for all to see. Lucas lingered at a distance, his gaze sharp and unyielding. In silence, he gently slipped the engagement ring from his finger and let it fall before her. The ring tumbled several times before coming to rest among the delicate, crumpled lace. The light from the chandelier danced upon the metal, yet it had lost all significance. "Hey, Lucas," Vanessa murmured, glancing upward. "I never imagined it would reach this point. I acknowledge my mistake. Please, I beg you, don't go." "Excuse me?" Lucas echoed, his voice raspy. "You deceived me, and you deceived my family. You manipulated a healthcare institution and exploited your identity to drain the trust of those around you. So now you choose to apologize?" Vanessa crawled toward him, her dress trailing behind like the lifeless body of a swan at a lavish ball turned tragic. "Mahalia, please," she cried, her voice breaking. "You are my sister. I assure you, that was not my intention. It was my mother, she was the one who encouraged me. There was no option available to me." I gazed down at her. The one our mother once referred to as the sole pride of the Hayes family. The person who found amusement in my humiliation, capturing it for the internet as if it were some twisted form of entertainment. At that moment, she found herself on her knees, arms extended, pleading for a lifeline to prevent her from sinking into despair. "Was there really no option available to you?" I whispered, my voice scarcely rising above a breath. "And what of my own place in this? Did I possess one for 9 years?" Vanessa erupted in tears, dark trails of mascara streaming down her face. "I apologize. I am willing to go to any lengths. I would humble myself before this entire city if it means earning your forgiveness." I crouched low, meeting her gaze directly, those eyes that once sparkled with confidence now reflecting a different story, a story that once regarded me as worthless. "Is forgiveness truly attainable?" A soft chuckle escaped my lips as I shook my head in disbelief. "No, Vanessa, forgiveness isn't something you can request, nor is it something I am obligated to offer." I averted my gaze, departing as she quivered on the ground. As I moved toward the exit, murmurs swelled behind me like the tide, the crowd shifted to create a path, as if I were a tempest that had just swept through the space. I chose not to glance behind me. Neither at my mother, nor at my father, nor at my sister. As it had come to an end. Yet, I had not returned to rescue them. I returned to bring it to a close. I exited the Ashbury Grand precisely at 10:12 p.m. The December wind lashed against my face, chilly, yet not as harsh as that night nearly a decade past, when I found myself outside their home empty-handed. This time, I felt steady. I stood my ground. I moved ahead, chin up, each step firm as if I were shattering the remnants of yesterday underfoot. The glow of city lights cascaded over the pavement, resembling an abstract masterpiece. Amidst all that radiance, an unusual tranquility enveloped me. A dark SUV lingered at the edge of the sidewalk. The window slid open, unveiling a recognizable visage, accompanied by a lopsided grin. "Is everything completed?" Nathan inquired, his tone gentle as the evening air. I opened the door and settled into the passenger seat, resting my clutch on my lap. With a sense of excitement, I exclaimed, tightening my seatbelt. "It has come to an end." Nathan refrained from inquiring about specifics. There was no necessity for him to do so. He possessed all the knowledge. All the bank statements I had collected throughout the years. Each evening, I found myself immersed in the task of going through old documents. In each fleeting instant, I found myself caught in a struggle between the act of forgiving and the urge to reveal the truth. He had stood there, silently, much like a solitary street lamp illuminating an intersection. Always illuminating my path without imposing, just enough for me to realize that I was never alone. He regarded me for an extended pause, then lifted an eyebrow, showcasing that cool, understated humor of his. "What comes next? Looking to indulge in some drinks, dance atop a table, or set fire to your sister's wedding gown?" I erupted into genuine laughter, a warm and heartfelt sound, not the icy, derisive chuckle from before, but a true expression of joy, emanating from deep within me, bright and pure like the first note after a prolonged, shadowy slumber. "Cake," I exclaimed, my eyes still shimmering with delight. "I desire cake. A generous portion of delightful sweetness, adorned with creamy frosting, rich chocolate, and an abundance of fresh strawberries." "Pastry?" Nathan inclined his head, a grin spreading across his face. "You have transformed a grand banquet hall into the scene of a monumental family legacy's downfall. Strolled out with the grace of royalty leaving her seat, and now you crave cake?" "Absolutely." I nodded, my gaze locked on the path before me. My actions were not driven by a desire for revenge. I accomplished it, to experience liberation. What better way to honor freedom than with a truly delightful slice of cake? Nathan fell silent for a moment, then accelerated the vehicle. The SUV moved effortlessly along the street, departing from the dazzling lights of the upscale hotel, and steering toward the area where we both sensed we truly fit in. A spot where jazz melodies flowed from a quaint corner cafe, accompanied by an aged neon sign that proclaimed, "Grace's Bakery. Available until late hours." Grace, a former five-star chef from Louisiana, established the bakery after stepping away from the world of fine dining. Nathan and I had visited that place several times. Though names slipped her mind, she had an uncanny ability to recall her customers' favorite dishes. As I entered, I noticed Grace knitting behind the counter, her glasses precariously sliding down her nose. She gazed at me, narrowing her eyes. "The girl who adores chocolate cake topped with strawberries has returned, hasn't she?" I offered a smile and a nod. "This evening, I desire 2 slices. And a delightful scoop of vanilla ice cream." Grace smirked and placed her knitting aside. "Did something happen? Your appearance suggests you've just caused a major explosion in the city." Nathan chuckled softly. "Almost there, Grace." We selected the corner booth, my preferred location, where the lighting was soft and the music enveloped the quiet moments with a tender embrace. As soon as the cake landed on the table, I dove in without hesitation. The initial taste cut through the velvety frosting, the rich chocolate layers dissolving almost immediately on my palate. The sweetness was pleasantly subtle. It brought a sense of warmth and ease. As if embracing the warmth of a long-awaited reunion, after being adrift for what feels like an eternity. "You know," Nathan remarked, stirring his coffee thoughtfully, "I always imagined you would confront them with a lot more intensity, like breaking things, yelling at them, and making headlines on the internet." I grinned and gently wiped the edge of my lips with a napkin. There were countless moments when I felt the urge, yet with each step forward, it became increasingly clear that harboring anger doesn't liberate you, it merely pulls you deeper into the same mire. Yet today, as I stepped out of that hall, I realized I had crafted my own conclusion. Nathan nodded, his eyes brimming with pride. The kind that lingers unspoken, yet resonates in the silence between inhalations. I gazed through the window. The city at night was not filled with noise, it embraced a warm ambience. Windows radiating a gentle golden hue, with buses gliding by at a leisurely pace. In that instant, I experienced a profound sense of vitality. Neither a neglected specter nor a weight on another's shoulders. I didn't return for vengeance, I murmured quietly, as if to no one in particular. I returned to finish it up. To close that difficult chapter and begin anew. Without resentment, without trepidation. Nathan's hand rested softly over mine. "Welcome to the next chapter of your journey, Amelia." I acknowledged with a nod. The discomfort in my eyes had vanished. the frustration as well. What lingered was an uncommon tranquility, following countless years of exploration. At that instant, I was certain of one thing. I didn't endure to seek retribution. I endured to attain my freedom. At this moment, I genuinely find myself in that state. Inaugurally. And for all eternity. Amelia's narrative serves as a profound reminder that your value is not determined by anyone else, not even those closest to you. Even in the face of abandonment, betrayal, and exploitation, she remained unbroken. She transformed her suffering into a foundation for a new life. In truth, each of us has the potential to be an Amelia, bearing the scars of our history yet entirely able to rise, advance, and take back control of our existence. The aim isn't retribution. The true victory lies in the power of freedom and the dignity of self-respect. How do you feel about Amelia's journey? Would you choose to forgive, or would you turn your back like she did? We invite you to express your insights in the comments section. Be sure to follow the channel to catch the next deeply moving family tale.